Bestiary of Sigillum. It's a two-player competitive head-to-head game, or maybe even a team-based game of arena-style combat. But it's much more than that. It's an area control game. It's a game where players are playing in very asymmetric teams because you're going to pick your summons, pick your team, compete against the other opponent or the other opponent's team in an effort to defeat them by destroying their castle and winning the game. But how does the game play, and what does the gameplay look like? We'll come on back up to our break for a full playthrough of Bestiary of Sigillum. Hey everybody, welcome off the show Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the tabletop gaming hobby, and this video is part of a video series looking at Bestiary of Sigillum. Now, Bestiary of Sigillum is a competitive or a team-based game where the basic objective of the game is for the players to defeat the opponent's castle using their summons. Now, the basic idea of the game is we're going to use our summons abilities to control catapults or maybe even directly attack our opponent's summons in an effort to deprive our enemy of their precious hit points of their castle. Once one player has had their castle's hit points completely depleted, that player or that team is going to be the loser of the game. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you some full playthrough for the game itself, but I want to let you know this is going to be based on a prototype copy of the game. Now, this game was sent to me by the publishers of the game, but I want to let you know I'm not paid for this video or this review series in any way, shape, or form. The publisher contacted me and said if this was a game I'm interested in. I said, heck yeah, because I've always loved chess-style games, Archon-style games, or basically head-to-head competitive games are games I really enjoy a lot. Now, if you enjoyed this playthrough video and you actually want to see a second playthrough video, I do have a link to another playthrough up here in the corner in the cards. Just one quick mention about that playthrough video though. I make a huge mistake when I play that playthrough video. And the only way you can actually watch this little playthrough right here is by clicking that link. It's actually going to be a hidden video because of the simple fact that I do make a mistake in the playthrough. And what's the mistake I make in the playthrough? Well, unfortunately, I recorded that video late at night after a big 16-hour shift. If you know me in the real world, you know I actually work as a first responder in the real world, and sometimes I work a lot of hours, and unfortunately made the mistake of recording late at night, and I completely forgot that anybody who's in a castle cannot be targeted by any abilities at all. Whoops, big mistake on my part. But the cool thing about that video is it actually shows you different summons, so you can see the different powers, the different abilities, and see how all those things shake up, change the game plan, just how changing the summons can change the styles and the strategies of the games. So if you want to check out the other video on top of this playthrough video, I can recommend it. Just remember that when I attack another summon who's in the castle, you can't do that. I'm breaking the rules. I'm breaking every single most important rule probably of the game is no summons can be attacked ever in a castle. You can never do anything to an opponent's castle at all except destroy his hit points. So just want to do that is a link up there. Check it out. Again, a good, great way to see the playthrough. Now, if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll make sure I answer those questions as quickly as I can. You also feel free to email me at off-the-shelf board game reviews. That is otsbgr@gmail.com. I do my best to answer those emails as quickly as I can. If you enjoyed the video, you enjoy the content, you enjoy the videos I put out there, think about supporting the channel on Patreon. Remember, this channel is 100% sponsor-free. Everything you see comes out of my own pocketbook. From the games I showed, to the content, to the equipment, everything I paid for myself. The great news is I can give you unbiased opinions. The kind of slight negative is this is all coming out of my own pocketbook. So tossing $1 in the tip jar is a great way to say thanks. Let me know that you enjoy the content. If you like this video, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and let's go ahead and get things started with our playthrough of Bestiary of Sigillum. So without any further ado, let's introduce our teams. Representing the side of the light is Cabalists, Carnifex, and Phrygius. Representing the dark side, it's okay to boo, they're the dark side, they're used to it. Architectus, Malleus, and Catapultus. Kind of fun to say that. Catapultus. I am Catapultus. Okay, I had enough fun with that. But let's go ahead and look at all of our summons and show you the powers they bring to every one of our teams, because one of the cool things about this game is the game basically plays before you even belly up to the table in effect, because when you're playing this game, before you set out the actual summons on the board and start competing against the other player, you're going to build your team. Now, every one of these teams has different strengths and different powers and different abilities and different things based on your summons and how you group up these summons. Some summons are really great at frontline fighters. Some summons are glass cannons. Some of them are all about control or buffing or debuffing their opponent. And the summons you pick on your team are going to decide the powers on combinations you're going to bring to the table. If you've ever played games such as Magic the Gathering or other games along those lines where you're bringing your own deck of cards to the table, you have the basic idea here. You're building your force before you set your forces to the table, and the combinations you're going to create are a lot of the part of the fun of the game. Creating your team, attacking your opponent's team, and outsmarting your team by using these combinations or these abilities are half of the gameplay here. So when you get the game, you're going to see that there are a vast amount of summons, close to 30 different summons. And in a 2-player game, every single player is going to have control of 3 summons. In a team or in the larger board variant of the game, which you can play as a 2-player if you wish, every player is going to get 4 summons. Now, you got to understand the cool thing about this game is when you activate a summon, you don't activate it, do everything you're going to do with it, and then you can't do anything else with that summon. This isn't like a Games Workshop game such as Warcry or any of those competitive style games where you're going to do something with one unit and you might as well forget that unit for the rest of your turn. On your turn, you're going to mix and match the abilities of every one of your summons. I may use a couple of powers from Cabalist, use one ability from Carnifex, go over to Phrygius, and then I may do a whole bunch of attacking with Cabalist because you're going to see how these guys' powers really combo off each other really, really well. So let's introduce our heroes, or our dark side enemies, and explain all the powers that we're going to have here. So first up, we have Cabalist. Cabalist has 4 hit points. His basic attack is a whip, but he also has the ability of lasso, and he also has the ability of heavy hooves. Now, heavy hooves is really cool because it's going to slow our enemies, and it combos with our whip power because our whip power allows us to hit everything that happens to be slowed. So if I slow everything, then I use my attack. You're seeing how the combinations work here. Already seeing how things work really well together here. Carnifex is next in the line. He has 4 hit points, and we see that his ability of the axe that allows him to hit any enemy in an adjacent hex. But the amount of damage he's going to do is based on how many negative effects we happen to have in play. Seeing the combination? Slow is a debuff. Damage based on debuffs. We're starting to see how things work over here. And then finally, we go all the way over to Phrygius, who has his basic attack ability, but he also has the ability to slow. Oh yes, now we see the combination. Slow, do damage based on debuffs, and then just hit everything on the board that has to be debuffed. That's the basic idea you're going to see by using these combination of heroes and light side summons versus the evil, horrible, dark side summons. We have Architectus, we have Malleus, and then we have Catapultus. Now the cool thing about Architectus, if I can do some control and have good position on the board, I'm going to gain increased damage power, but he's actually one of the rare guys who can actually repair your castle. Kind of a nice bonus. Malleus over here is a pretty nice guy. He does have the ability to do some basic attacks, but his really great thing is the fact that he can stun. What does a stun do? Well, if you're stunned, you don't get to do anything on your turn, so it's a very powerful ability. Not only that, he can raise the control of any player on his own or any summon on his team. What is control for? Well, you're going to see how that works in the game, but basically the more control you have in influence a catapult, the greater chances you have of activating that catapult, and when the catapults activate, they all besiege your enemy's castle. And remember, when you besiege your enemy's castle, it takes damage. If it takes enough damage, your team is going to win. Now you see how that all works together. Finally, we have Catapultus, who is really nice. He's actually a ranged distance attacker, can attack anything in a line, but he also can increase our control. So what do we have here? Our stun team versus our control team. Who is going to be the grand winner? Well, let's get this party started. So the first thing we need to do is anytime we start playing the game is the light player always starts with 2 points of reduced structural integrity for their personal castle. They can never get their hit points past this point by using any healing. For example, if this team happen to have Architectus, you always have -2 hit points. That's your penalty for starting first. The evil dark side, again, it's okay to boo them. It starts out with full amount of hit points. Our left side summon is going to be the first summon that will start on the board, and now normally these would be flipped around so this player can read them, but I'm not going to try to read upside down. So understand, for the light player, this is left to right, and for the dark player, this is going to be left to the right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to start the turn, and the very first thing normally we would do would be to advance the dial here. But we don't need to worry about that on the first round. We also don't need to worry about any cleanup. So we're going to move right immediately to the second part of the round, which is the activation phase for the light player. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to activate Cabalist. So Cabalist is going to activate. The first thing I can do is I'm either use my ability to attack or I use my primary ability to move. Well, you cannot do anything to an enemy who happens to be in a castle. That happens to be a safe zone for them. So I'm going to activate my power for the ability to move. I'm simply going to advance up 1 space just like that. Do I want to use lasso, heavy hooves? Nope, don't want to use it yet. So next thing that's going to happen is the moment your castle is unoccupied, the next summon in order, that's why it's important the order that you lay out these summons, is going to immediately occupy your castle hex. And now I need to figure out what I want to do with Carnifex. I still technically can do stuff with Cabalist, which is very, very cool, but I can't move because I've already used my movement for this round. Phrygius who is not on the board at all, can't do anything. So I must get this space unoccupied so I get Phrygius out there and possibly do some other cool things. So for Carnifex, I'm simply going to activate him for his movement. And now I need to decide which way do I want to go. Well, I'm thinking, always a good idea to think in these kind of games, is I'm going to start rotating to the left. If I get some control over this castle, life is going to be wonderful. Plus, I know my opponent loves castle spaces. There's more castle spaces over here than over on this side of the board, so I'm thinking that this is the side of the board that I want to control. See how just the strategies are already being decided just based on the team that we brought to the table. So, Carnifex is going to activate for his movement, and we're just going to mosey on over that direction. Our castle is unoccupied, so immediately our next summon comes out. From now on, anytime one of our summons is defeated and sent back to the castle, we will lose structural integrity. So the first round is free. After that, it's all bets are off, and we want to make sure that we're not getting besieged by catapults. We also make sure that our summons are not dying, because when they die, our structural integrity also goes down. So I have Phrygius out on the board. Which direction I want to move Phrygius? Well, Phrygius loves the water. So let's go and move him towards the water. Move up just like this. Do I have any abilities I want to use? Nope. Do I have anything I need to do? Nope. Let's go ahead and end our turn, and let's go ahead over to the evil dark side. Now, the dark side player actually has all of their units put up in a wonderful, wonderful order because we can actually do things on our turn. So we know that Architectus, I want to get to the mountains as quickly as possible because all of our abilities are based on how much we control mountains. We see over here that our reconstruction ability says the timer on this is going to be based on how many allies we have on mountains. Yes, we want to be on mountains. I will activate and move out of the space and start heading this direction over here. Now I have a couple abilities. I have reconstruction, not going to do any good for me at this point. I have fortification, which allows me to throw down a rock obstacle onto the board, and that rock obstacle can actually block things and create a space that my opponents cannot do anything in. Let's have our pieces out and be much more efficient next time in the future. I could simply throw that out and create a blockaded space if I really want to. I think it's a little bit early for us to do that, even though I definitely could throw this out here just like that and create some problems for our opponents. Not going to worry about this time. So next up comes out Malleus, who happens to be the Earth Shaker. Again, first round, bring out our summons, does not take structural integrity. So I want to get off this space as quickly as possible. Which direction do I want to go? That's what I need to think about. He does have the great abilities that his abilities actually happen to work in a line of effect. We can see the way abilities work here just by looking at these symbols down there, which happens to match up with this back of the rule book, which is a wonderful, nice, quick reference. Abilities that affect us and any hex on the board, abilities that affects abilities in a straight line, anything that's not adjacent to us and adjacent, etc., etc. Effect markers, quick reference, it's all there nice and easy for you to figure out. We can look over here at a Fisher ability, and it basically says the target can be anything in a straight line. Well, let's use it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to move off of this hex right here. So we have used this, our primary ability for movement only. And then we are going to activate the Fisher ability. Now Fisher says right here, our target is all enemies in any hexes in a straight line from Malleus. Well, I do see a valid target right here, which happens to be Caballus. Let's go ahead and do this. So this timer is going to go over here on the 4. Let us know it's going to be 4 rounds before we get that ability back. And the nice thing is now we get to place a stun on our target. Our target happens to be Caballus. Now this ability does not do any damage, but that means that Caballus does not get to do anything on his turn. We have slowed down our opponent in our effort to gain control of catapults and do some damage. Do I want to use my ditch ability? Our ditch ability allows us to get extra control. I don't think we need to worry about it. It can be a defensive and an offensive tactic. Let's not worry about that quite yet. Plus, as a long cooldown of 4, I don't want to just quite use that quite yet. So, empty castle. Catapultus is going to come out right here, right now. And let's look at everything that Catapultus can do. Well, Catapultus knows that we want to attack our enemy. Now, Catapultus' very cool ability says that he can do lots of damage. The problem is that he cannot attack anything that happens to be size small. How do you tell if something is size small? It has 2 hit points. If it has something that's 3 or 4 hit points, it is medium. And if something happens to have 5 hit points, it happens to be big. Well, Catapultus' ability can only be used against medium or big targets, i.e. things with 3, 4, or 5 hit points. Meaning that we cannot attack Phrygius, so that means our likely catapult targets we can have are Carnifex and Caballus. So how do we make things happen? Well, let's go and do some damage. And actually, now that I think about it, in an effort to show you just how variable the combat and the actions in this game can be, it's not always great to come out raging like a bull in a china shop and start attacking your opponents. This is a game about offensive, defensive, and control. So let's work on that control aspect. So instead of just going ahead and attacking somebody that happens to be stunned, I don't really need to worry about them. They're not going to do anything on their turn anyways. Let's play smarter, let's play better, let's strip our opponent of their powers and abilities. If Phrygius gets to water, he's going to make our life difficult. Let's make that not happen. So instead of making a catapultist attack, I am actually going to activate his primary ability for the maneuver power, and I'm going to move off of the castle. Once I moved off the castle, I'm going to activate my boulder power right here. The boulder power says that I can hit any enemy in a hex in a straight line from catapultist. Size is not an issue this time. Any enemy I hit is going to be stunned, and they'll be stunned for 4 rounds. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to activate my boulder. It's also going to go in the 4 timer slot right here, meaning I will not get that power back for 4 turns. Do note that the dial is only advancing on the light player's turn, not on the dark player's turn, so that does control how long it's going to take me to get my abilities back. Now that I've activated my stun power, we are going to stun Phrygius, who now has a stun token on them. I've used all my abilities. I could use more of my abilities, but I don't think I want to do that quite yet. Let's hold on to them, watch what our opponent may or may not do, and let's go and end the very first round of the game. Second round of the game, we go back to the light side. Remember, anytime the light side starts their turn, before they do anything, the very first thing we will do is advance the timer, bringing us ever so closer to our abilities and our powers coming back. Now that we've done that, we will go through and figure out if there's any abilities that we, on the light side, produced on our prior turn. Any buffs we produce will be removed. Any negatives that we produced on our opponents will also be removed. So we'll look and see that neither of those is the case. All these debuffs were caused by our opponent, not by us, so we're not going to remove any of those things. So we simply go to our activation, our ability phase, and figure out what we want to do with our, you guessed it, with our only one person who can still activate. But sometimes one can be enough. Let's see if we make some good things happen. So before we activate, we must make sure that as part of the refresh and the time phase, we will refresh all of our primary abilities. Even for our stunned heroes, they are stunned, but they still get to refresh. Now Caballus, actually not even Caballus, Carnifex gets to activate. So Carnifex, unfortunately, does not have a lot of ranged abilities. We have one ability here that says any enemy with at least one positive effect. Unfortunately, what we would do is replace all the target's positive effects with contrary negative effects, and the time loss would be equal to the target's current number of vitality points. Well, that could be anywhere from 3, 4, or even 5, but it's also current, not actual max. So we got to pay attention to that. But basically what I'm saying is, what do we want to do? I am thinking that we are simply going to activate for a maneuver. I want to get onto a mountain. 2 reasons why I want to do this. First, control, which I'll explain in just a second when we get to the control phase, but primary reason, I want to keep my opponent off as many mountains as possible because they're going to affect Architectus' ability. Because you see over here that his ability refreshes based on how many mountains they control. Mountains, plains, forest, and water, and of course the 2 catapults and the 2 castle spaces. Very, very important. The kind of spaces on the board can matter. And of course, water also matters for Phrygius and their special ability. But I'm moving over here, and that's what I want to do, and that used up my activation. Whoops, sorry, wrong guy. That activated my activation right here. Now I need to see if there's any other abilities I can use. Nobody's enraged for stockades. Convicted guilty is not going to work here because none of my opponents have any buffs. So I think we're going to end the activation of the ability part of our phase, and now we're going to move to the control phase. How does control work? Well, control is how we control the castles. Basically, every summon has a basic control of 1. When we come to our turn, and our turn only, the catapults will only activate for us. What does that mean? That means on light's turn, only light can activate the catapults, and that means on dark's turn, only dark can activate the catapults. So if you don't have enough control over a catapult on your turn, the catapult does nothing. If you have the dominant amount of control, that means the catapult does activate. How do we figure out control when it comes to these catapults? Whoever has the most influencing control over the catapult is the one who gets to activate it. How do we figure out control? Well, we're going to look at the hex where the where the catapult happens to be, and all adjoining hexes. You're going to add up the total amount of control for your units versus your opponent's units. If the total amount of control is greater than your opponent's, the catapult activates. If it's equal to or less than, nothing's going to happen. So catapult is right here. The adjoining spaces are right here. We see that I'm the only one who is either on a catapult space or next to a catapult space. I have 1 point of control. I control this catapult. This catapult doesn't activate. It's automatically going to shoot my opponent's castle, doing 1 point of damage. Unfortunately, this catapult right here is not controlled by anybody because nobody's on the catapult space and nobody's next to it. Nothing's going to happen. Let's end the light turn and go back over to the dark side. For the dark side player, the first thing we do is the time phase. Now remember, just to re-emphasize, during the dark player's turn, the time dial does not advance at all. The only thing we're going to do is look at if the arrow right here happens to be pointing to any of our abilities. If it's pointing to any of our abilities, those abilities will be refreshed. That is not the case, and the dial does not advance, so we're simply going to move over to the rest of the time phase. First thing we will do is we will return all of our charged abilities back to our primary abilities back to refresh. We'll remove any buffs from ourselves or any debuffs we did to our opponents. They will all be removed. And then we will start our turn with the ability phase. Now on the ability phase, I need to figure out exactly what I want to do here. And I think I know exactly what I'm going to do, which is going to be very cool and some nice devious things. And again, not burning too many of my powers here. So the very first thing that I want to do is figure out how I can make my opponent's life as difficult as possible. So to do so, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the ditch power from Malleus, which if we look over here is Malleus or any adjoining unit, we can use the ability of ditch. What does the ability of ditch do? Is Malleus or any ally in an adjacent hex, if the target occupies a catapult tower hex, gains 1 point of control. I like that quite a bit. So let's go ahead and use ditch. We see the timer on this is going to be a 4. The 4 is now over here in this space, so this will be placed over here, letting us know when we get that ability back. We are now going to increase the control for Architectus by 1. Architectus now has a total control of 2. Watch why this is going to be so darn cool in just a moment. Notice I haven't used any movement powers at all. Now we're going to go over to Architectus. Architectus is simply going to use their main power for movement. Again, moving on top of a mountain space, making them nice and happy. And they still have some of their abilities left to go. And I think I'm actually going to use one of those abilities right here, right now, to keep us just a little bit safer, I think. We are going to put out our stone. Fortification says any space adjacent to us and has a refresh timer of 3. So place this over here on the 3. And I'll place this boulder right down on that catapult spot, just right that, to help me keep my enemy from moving next to me and attacking me. That's what I'm trying to minimize. Even though I have a lot of hit points, 5 hit points, and take a good beating, I want to make sure that he doesn't die. Remember, when our summons die, it affects the amount of hit points we have. Speaking of hit points right now, though, let's see if we can go ahead and gain a little bit of hit points back for our castle. Let's go and use Reconstruction. Now, Reconstruction is going to be 5 minus 1 per ally in a mountain hex. So 5 minus 1 is 4. This will also go on the 4, and our castle will regain 1 hit point. Remember, light can never go beyond this spot, but the dark can always go back to the number 10 spot right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I'm sorry, 13 spot. You knew what I meant. Anyways, back to our actions. See how we're bouncing back and forth between our summons? This is how we're making combinations work out really, really well for us. Next up, the next thing that I am going to do is, well, I have a lot of things I can do here. A couple different options, but I'm going to stick with what I was thinking originally. I will use R power for maneuvering to move right here into the water. Probably not the best idea, looking at Phrygius, but hey, we're going to have to take some risks and take some chances here, right now. Next thing we will do is we will activate Catapultus also for their maneuver power to move them over here into this forest space. Now we still have our siege stance, which allows us to increase our control. And actually, it probably would have been smart of me to do that, I think. Oh well, hindsight's 50-50. What I probably should have did is left him and just advanced right here and then did an attack, which probably would have been a little bit better, but I didn't do it. So, well, hindsight's 20/20. So let's leave it where we're at. Let's not activate anything. We are done with all the abilities that we want to use. Again, we don't have to use all of our abilities, just the ones we want to use. It's how we create the combinations. So now we're going to go to the control phase. So remember, every one of our summons has an effective level control of 1. So we have 1 plus 1, thanks to the buff, for a total of 2. 2 is greater than 1. That means this catapult is going to activate. Very, very nice. Over here, we have 2 versus 0 from our opponent, meaning that we also control this catapult. That means that both of these catapults are going to fire against the light player on the dark player's turn, doing 2 points of damage. So we have now done 2 points of damage to the light player. Remember, darkness can heal their castle. That's something the light player does not have the ability to do. That is going to be it for the dark player's turn. We have done our control phase. Now we've done the end of the round. Let's go back to the light phase. And the very first thing that happens in the light phase is we advance the dial right here, bring us ever so closer to bringing all of our powers back into play. Let's go ahead and refresh everything. Not that there's that much to refresh here. So we refresh Carnifex. The good news is we have access to all of our abilities, and we don't have any debuffs we need to pull off or any self-buffs that we need to pull off. But now let's start using our abilities. First things first, for the light player, we will activate Carnifex. We're going to activate Carnifex as primary ability, and we're going to use it for its maneuvering. We will maneuver right to the space right here. Next thing we are going to do is we're going to activate our ability called Convict the Guilty. Convict the Guilty says any enemy with at least 1 positive effect. By Jove, I see an enemy with a positive effect. We're going to replace all those positive effects with like negative effects, which means now their control is effectively 0. Because they all start with a 1. 1 minus 1 right here is going to bring them down to 0. That activates our Convict the Guilty. So we're going to equal to the current number of vitality points of our opponent, which is going to be 5. Unfortunately, it's a long timer, but hey, it could always be worse. And then we're going to activate our Stockade's power next. It says any enemy in an adjacent hex, we can do a control decrease. Actually, I don't even need to do that yet. Don't even need to do that. I can do this even so much better. Don't need to worry about it. Let's just be done with Carnifex just for 1 instant right here, because I think that works out perfectly fine. Next thing we will do is we will activate Cabalus. So Cabalus will go right here by activating his maneuver power right just like that. Actually, don't want to do that. Thinking, actually, I may be able to do this even smarter, but I think that's going to work out okay. Just let's... Oh, I'm thinking about this. Not to cause delays, but I'm thinking about a better way to do this might be to do something else. Move there, and then lasso out. Actually, I think I'm going to completely change what I was thinking about doing, because I'm actually liking this new idea a heck of a lot better. Do that. That would work a heck of a lot better. That would work a heck of a lot better. Okay, so we've moved just like this. The next thing we will do is we will activate our lasso power. Our lasso power has a timer of 4. It says any characters in adjacent hex. We will move away, and we will pull that unit out just like that, so now he does not offer any control. Reset timer on this is going to be 4. We will place this under the 4 timer just like that. Now I could activate Heavy Hooves possibly, but I don't think I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to activate Phrygus next, who is going to activate that for their maneuver power. We are going to maneuver just like that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to activate nothing, because if they do what I think they're going to do, this will actually work out a heck of a lot better. I think all I'm going to do is do Shackling Cold, because I think that's going to work out a heck of a lot better. So I'm going to activate Shackling Cold. Any enemy, and they're going to have an attack decrease of 1. Now, all enemies, or all units, I should say, have a basic attack of 1. They all have a basic defense of 0, which basically means if they don't have any defense, you're going to do at least 1 point of damage. Kind of keeps it nice and easy there. So we're going to do Shackling Cold, which is going to decrease our attack. So now this effectively has a 0 attack, which makes us kind of happy. This is going to have a 3 normal retimer unless our target is in a water hex, which happens to be. That means that this is going to have a refresh timer of a 2. Now, we haven't done any damage, but we did manage to stymie our opponent, and we're also going to do some damage. I'm not going to do any more activations with my summons here. Let's go ahead and move over to our control phase. 2 points of control versus 0. We always have dominance, so this catapult is going to fire and do 1 point of damage. Next up, we see we have 1 point of control versus 1 point of control. That's going to be a push, so that is not going to activate. That's it for the light player's turn. Now we get to go to the dark player's turn. Now remember, this is not going to advance. Nothing's underneath the arrow that's showing it's going to refresh, so simply going to refresh all of our primary powers and figure out exactly what we want to do. But before we do that, any negatives we applied against our opponents or any positives we applied to ourselves will need to be removed. These are negatives applied by our opponents, not by us and on us, so those are not going to change. So now we simply go to our ability phase and figure out how we want to do things right now. This comes off, and I think I should remove that last round. I do apologize, because that should have stayed only for 1 round. If I forgot, it didn't make a big difference, I don't think. Or, no, actually, I think I did the time right. Correct me in the comments down below if I forgot to remove it early, and if I did, I do apologize. So how do we want to do things? Currently, we are seeing that he has no attack power right now. Even if I did my attack, I would do absolutely nothing by doing so. So attacking is pointless, and I don't have any abilities. I think what I want to do is I want to maneuver to gain control of the catapult again, so I can at least do some damage to my opponent's castle, because that's a good way to win the game. Now that we've done that, I'm going to look over here and see if there's anything I can do. I have no control. That's not a good thing, but I do have the possibility to do some attacking power. I can attack, it says Tower Barrage, any enemy in any hex in a straight line from Architectus. The damage is going to be +1 per catapult tower under allied control. We don't control this catapult, but we now control this catapult because it's 2 versus 1 versus 0 versus 2. So I'm now doing 1 point of damage in a line. I think I'm going to ignore Carnifex, and I'm going to go directly for Phrygius. So I'm going to activate my Tower Barrage. Since I'm not moving, I'm going to use it for its attack power. Again, its total attack power is 1 point of damage, and we're going to do 1 point of damage to Phrygius. Now again, just a nice reminder, this is a prototype copy in the game. In the final version of the game, every one of these summons is going to have a whole bunch of health tokens on them. I believe they're going to look like hearts, if I'm not mistaken, from the mock-ups that I've seen. And every time you take a point of damage, you're simply going to flip one of those hearts over to the backside, showing that's a point of damage. In this prototype only, when we take damage, we're simply going to place a point of damage on it. And we see that Phrygius has now taken 1 point of damage. One more point of damage, and he's defeated. But when he's defeated, that's going to be another point of damage to the castle. So again, it's part of my strategies and part of my tactics. Now, what do I want to do next? I am thinking that Catapultus is going to attack. Catapultus does not need to move, and we are simply going to use our attack power. Again, his ability allows him to attack in a line. And the amount of damage this is going to do is going to be based on the size of our target. If our target is small, it does nothing. If it's medium, remember 3 or 4 hit points, it does 1 point of damage. If it happens to be large, which is 5 hit points, which is going to be 2 points of damage. And it says it all right here. So we're simply going to attack, and we, with Catapultus, in a straight line, are going to attack Cabalus, who now has 3 hit points left. Do I want to do Siege Stance? I don't think I need to do Siege Stance, which allows us to raise our control up by 1. Don't need to worry about that at all. And now that I remember that, I should have been smart and left him there, and that wasn't smart of me. That was not smart of me at all. I actually just played pretty dumb. So leave comments down below and say, hey, dumb move, because you're right. I absolutely agree with you. That was a very dumb move of me. Hindsight's 2020. So I am done activating all of my summons. I think the dark player's turn is over. Let's go back to the light. And again, for the light, we will rotate the dial 1 more space, getting ever so much closer to getting some of our powers back. Let's refresh all of our primary abilities for all of our summons. And any debuffs we put on our opponents on our last turn will be removed. Any buffs we place on ourselves are also going to be removed. And now we go to our ability phase. So, ability phase time. We see that we're starting to take damage, but we also control some catapults. Don't have a lot of cool abilities left yet, but we do have a way to do things to our enemies. I just have to play smart. I think what is going to happen here is that we're going to activate some powers with Frigus first, since I'm pretty sure Frigus is about to bite the bullet. So the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to activate Spell of Frost. Spell of Frost is any enemy, doesn't matter where they happen to be on the board, and the refresh timer is going to be 3. Place this on the 3 right here, and this allows us to slow any enemy out there on the board. I should have organized these. That would probably been much more efficient, but hey, I didn't. I will place that token right there, slowing that enemy. Next up, only Cabalists have been positioned smarter. Oh, well, he's not. Next up, I am going to activate my whip for damage. So my whip says all slowed enemies are going to take an attack value of 1 versus their defense. Now, all summons have a defense of 0, like I said earlier. So I'm simply going to activate this to do 1 point of damage to Catapultus. So that basically returns the friendly fire from earlier. Now, I think I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to activate Rain of Ice. This says any enemy with at least 1 negative effect. I say negative effect. Let's do a point of damage, meaning Catapultus has now taken 2 points of damage. Is there anything else I want to do? Oh, yes, there's lots of things I want to do. I think what we are going to do is, I need to slow down my enemy some. I think, therefore, maneuver, stockades, decrease control. Is it worth the push? I think it's worth a push at this point because we're starting to take a lot of damage and I am not liking that at all. So, Stockades has a timer of 4. I will place this over here on the 4 timer just like that. And Stockades says any enemy in an adjacent hex is going to have a control decrease. We're in an adjacent hex, so we are going to take a control decrease. I think we're done activating all of our summons. You see the turns here go pretty darn quick once you get past the slight analysis paralysis of trying to plan your turns out. But the turns do go pretty darn quick. So, Cabalists and Carnifex and Frigus have activated. I don't want to do any more abilities, so the only, not that I have many left to do, although I could do a Heavy Hooves. Is it worth it? Oh no, I can't, sorry. Thinking about the wrong thing, sorry, ignore me. Moving on. So the only thing we're left to do is do the control. So 1 point of control versus 1 point of control is a push. 1 point of control versus 2 minus 1 is also 1. That is also going to be a push. Neither one of the catapults are going to activate, but we've also managed to slow down our opponent from reactivating their catapults on their turn, because these debuffs are not going to deactivate on their turn. Let's go to the Dark player's turn. So Dark player turn, we will refresh all of our slid abilities, and we will get our primary abilities back. Nothing's underneath the arrow yet, but we know next round we're getting all 3 of those abilities back. We might want to plan for that. Let's figure out exactly what we want to do. I am thinking that we want to kill Frigus and do some more damage. First thing we will do is, since we don't have a decrease to our attack power with this unit right here, Malleus is going to attack. He's going to use his Pick Hammer, which is any adjacent hex enemy will take 1 point of damage. That means Frigus is going to be defeated. Now, if your castle happens to be occupied, your defeated summons will go back onto their card and they will come back in order, just like we did at the beginning of the game. Since we see that our castle is not occupied, that means Frigus will go directly onto our castle. Any debuffs or buffs or damage he happens to have on him will be removed and will be completely refreshed, and he'll get his abilities back on his turn. Now, the big unfortunate thing here is we don't get any of our used abilities back. All we're going to lose is our buffs and debuffs and get all our hit points back. But the really big negative here is, though, since I lost a summon, I'm also going to lose 1 hit point for my castle. Anytime one of your summons dies, it takes 1 point of your structural damage from your castle. Catapultus is now going to activate. Let's see here. Did I want to do a little differently, though? I got a lot of control over here, and he definitely has the ability to advance his control. Yeah, I wanted to do something a little bit different, but we're going to go with it. Catapultus is going to activate his catapult power. Remember, this attacks in a straight line, so again, we're targeting Cabalists. So we're in range, and it says any medium or big enemy in any hex in a straight line from Catapultus cannot target a small entity. Well, he is not small. It's going to do 1 point of damage because he is medium, so it's going to be 1 more point of damage to Cabalus, who has taken that point of damage. I've now activated these two guys. Now, what do I want to do with Architectus? Well, Architectus is actually looking great because he also can attack anything in a straight line with his tower barrage. But nothing is positioned in a straight line for us, even though we would do 1 point of damage, which would be absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, that is not going to be the case, so I think I don't have my castle ability back, so let's position a little bit better so we can start doing some damage. I'm going to position right here. Hopefully I'm not going to regret this because we're still 2 turns from getting our healing ability back, so I think I'm going to position just like that. That is it for all of our heroes. We are now going to go to the control phase. 1 versus 1 is a push. We have 0. But we have 1 right here, so we are going to gain control over this catapult. This catapult is going to activate, doing 1 more point of damage to the light player. Let's go back to the light player, and we will advance the timer just like this. And one of our heroes, or one of our summons, is going to gain their power back. So Phrygius will regain Shackling Cold, which is any enemy gives their attack a decrease. Before we do anything, any buffs and debuffs will be removed. We'll put those back over there. And now we get to go to our ability phase after we refresh these things really, really quick. Now we're 2 rounds from getting those abilities back. We have 2 points of damage on this unit right here. I think that we want to make Catapultus die a horrible, horrible, horrible death really quick. Because in the grand scheme of things, we're losing the war of attrition right here. How can I make this happen? Well, I am thinking that we don't have lasso, we have heavy hooves, also enemies, shackling cold, any enemy attack decrease, rain of ice. Thinking, pondering, pondering, pondering. You know it's a good game when you want to stop and think and plan this far in advance. I think Cabalus is not going to die if I can take out Catapultus. Let me take out Catapultus because I think that's going to be the smartest thing to do. So the first thing we are going to do is we will activate Shackling Cold. Now remember, Shackling Cold allows us to attack any target as long as they're on the field and the target is not in a castle space. What it's going to do is it's going to cause them to have an attack decrease. Now if I was on a water hex, which I'm not, sadly, this would actually have a refresh timer of 2. Unfortunately, since I'm not, it's going to have a refresh timer of 3, and I think it's worth it in this case. We're going to have an attack decrease of 1. Why am I targeting Catapultus? Because our Rain of Ice ability can only be used on an enemy with at least 1 negative effect. There's a negative effect. Let's go and activate that for 1 point of damage. That will do 1 point of damage to Catapultus, who only has 3 hit points naturally. That'll be the 3rd point of damage to Catapultus. He will be removed, or as the game calls it, exiled. He will return to the castle right there, and that will cause 1 point of siege damage to the dark player. The bonus here is now that we see they are slowly losing the control that they have. Now, Carnifex cannot attack Catapultus because he's safe inside the castle. So I want to maneuver in a smart way. I'm not getting my abilities back anytime soon, but I could attack Malleus. But I think what I want to do is I want to make my opponent's life difficult. Let's go for movement. We'll move into that space just like that. Okay. Now, I think, do I attack? Well, he's coming close to dying. How do I want to do this? I'm pretty much slowing them down just a little bit. But is it going to be enough? Let's go into attack. Probably not the best idea, but let's do it. Let's go and attack. We will attack our opponent right here. Oh, wait, they have to be slow. That's right. I forgot about that. His whip ability is all slowed enemies. There are no slowed enemies. I could heavy hooves them first. I'll do that. Let's heavy hooves, which is going to be 2. Probably not the best use of this. It's not how I wanted to do this, but I'm going to slow them. It might actually work out for us. Now I'll activate to do 1 point of damage to Architectus. That means he only has 4 hit points left. think we are done for the light player. Let's go over to the control phase. So for the control phase for the light player, we have a 1 versus 1, which is a push. We have 0 control versus 1 control. Remember, they only activate on our side, so we are not going to activate either one of these catapults. We need to do something to get caught up here, because again, this war of attrition is not really on our side right now. Let's go back to the dark player. So the very first thing the dark player will do, will refresh their abilities. Then we will remove any debuffs from our opponents or any buffs on ourselves that does not exist. So let's go ahead and apply any special abilities after we regain back all of our abilities that happen to be pointed at by the little arrow right here signifying that those powers have been refreshed. Let's see how we make this work out in our favor. I think at this time for the dark player, what I'm thinking about is doing a little bit of control at this point and not getting too hyperactive and basically destroying the nice lead we have going on right now. So let's take things nice and easy at this point. Malleus is going to do his pick hammer attack and do 1 point damage, which is any enemy in adjacent hex is going to take 1 point damage. We see that Carnifex happens to be an adjacent hex, 1 point damage. Not a big deal, but again, we're whittling down our opponents very slowly and very, very surely. Now that we've done that, the next thing that we are going to do is we're still controlling. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to activate Tower Barrage. Now Tower Barrage is any enemy in any hex in a straight line from Architectus, which is right here. Now Architectus can't move, so I might as well attack. And I'm going to attack, and I'm going to hit Cabalus, and he's going to take 1 more point of damage just like that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to activate Catapultus. Now Catapultus is going to put his boulder, use his boulder ability, which has a timer of 4, so let's place this under the 4 right now, and we're going to stun any enemy in a hex in a straight line from Catapultus. Let's go ahead and stun this enemy right now, which means that they cannot do anything. So Carnifex is effectively stunned, and I think what we will do is we will simply maneuver out just like that. I think that's probably going to be our best option at this point. I'm liking that. I think that's going to work for us. We've activated as much as I want to activate. I think, although, do I do it? I'm thinking about Fisher, but I'm thinking saving Fisher because Architectus can still take a huge beating. I'm going to save Fisher. I'm not going to stun him. Let's just stop right there. I think I'm happy with that. Dark player's turn is over. Let's go back to the light. Now remember, we are going to advance the timer track right here for refreshing all of our buffs. Any debuffs we put on our enemies are going to be removed. Any buffs we put on ourselves would also be removed. We will refresh all of our abilities that we can. Let's figure out what we want to do. Architectus is unhurt. Catapultus is the easiest one to take out. When every time we take them out, we're going to do damage there also. But we're not doing what we need to do. We can't lose sight of the goal. Catapults are a nice goal, and also defeating our enemies is a nice goal. Our enemies have a decent amount of hit points. That's probably not going to be the best way to do it. We need to be controlling these catapults. That's probably going to be our best way to do things. Lots of talking, not a lot of doing. Let's do less talking, let's do more doing. Can't slow. Maneuver like this. You're out of it. You can only do damage to slowed enemies. Nobody is slowed. And you are going to basically die next turn. And there's no way to heal you that I see. Our enemy is playing very, very smart. I don't want to just back up because then you're going to catapult us. But if I don't back up, you're going to kill me, then catapult us. I get lasso back next turn. If I can abuse lasso, that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So we are simply going to maneuver and make sure that we are not going to go right. Everywhere I go, I'm just pretty much, I should not have put him there. Should not put Frigus there. I should have moved Frigus right there. That would have been the smarter move. I should have put Frigus there, and then I should have moved right there. But I didn't do it. And no retconning, because I do not believe in retconning. So, simply going to move like that. Hopefully this does not cause me a lot of problems. I am finished. Now we go over to the dark player. Refresh. refresh, and refresh. We are going to regain this power, and we will also regain this power. The dark side is doing a wonderful job of controlling the tempo. Light needs to step up their game, otherwise they're going to lose very, very quickly here. And let's get that losing streak happening right now. First things first, let's catapult. So Catapult is going to do 1 point damage in a straight line because he is medium. That'll be the 4th point of damage to him. He is defeated. I knew that was a bad mistake what I did, but I really had no choice. Defeated, back to the castle, and 1 more point of damage. And that's Catapult ability used. And Architectus, we don't control any mountains. Oh, that actually would have been smart of me to do that now that I think about it, but oh well. Architectus is going to attack. We control 2 catapults right now. That means we're going to do 2 points damage to anything in a straight line. So Carnifex is going to take 2 more points of damage from our Tower Barrage ability. Again, this says any enemy in a hex in a straight line. You're in a straight line. 2 points damage because we control 2 of the catapults. And then I think what we're going to do is we're just going to be mean, and we're going to use our Pick Hammer ability. It says any enemy in adjacent hex, we're going to attack for 1 point of damage. Carnifex has taken his 4th point of damage, and Carnifex is defeated. Since our castle happens to be occupied, that means that Carnifex does not come out there, so he's going to be off the board because you can only have 1 of your summons on the castle at a time. I think I'm happy with what we got here. I'm happy. I don't think I'm going to do much else. Controlling, that is 1, 2 points of damage. We are done with the dark player's turn. Let's go back to the light player because light player needs to figure out what they're going to do because if they don't do something really, really quick, it's basically game over for them. And I am very puzzled on how I'm going to avoid it being game over. That is what happens when you don't play to your team's strengths and focus on our strengths. I think what I should have did with this team is completely ignored the catapults and completely attacked my opponent because I had the potential to do a lot of damage. I just completely ignored it. It's kind of the fun thing about the game. 2 tactics, catapults or defeating your enemy or a combination of both depending on the buffs, the powers, and everything you have. I didn't focus on the strength of the light team, but I definitely focused on the strength of the dark team here. Did a very slow-paced, very controlled burn, and is very much paying off. Let's do something really, really quickly, because if we don't, we are definitely going to lose the game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I have no choice here. Refreshed. Timer. Did I miss anything while I was talking? I didn't miss anything. So, can I kill any of you? Catapultus? Nope. Whip. All slowed enemies. All slowed enemies take damage. I could do 2 points of damage, but that's not going to win it for us. I don't see anything that we can do that will allow us to do anything except stall things out. But is it worth it to stall things out? It could be worth it to play a stall game. So let's go here. He's just going to obliterate me. I know it. That's not smart. I'm playing dumb. I am not playing smart here. I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones. Here, there. Brings him out like that. I'm not liking this. Okay. No control, no control. Our turn's over. We now go back to the dark side player. This refreshes, that refreshes, that refreshes. No arrows point to any abilities, no buffs, no debuffs to worry about. If I play this right, can I end it this round? I'm going to do at least 1 point of damage. If I can kill one... Oh, that was dominating. Yep, I just gave the game to the dark player. I literally just gave the game to the dark player. And I'm sure all of you for like the past 2-ish minutes have been screaming at the screen about how I just gave the game away to my opponent. You're right. Very, very poorly played on my part. But hey, that's part of the strategy of this game. This is a very chess-like game. Just like chess, the victory goes to the smarter player because it's a perfect moves game. You know everything you can do. You do everything your opponents can do. The objective is to do your things better than your opponent does their things. Let me show you exactly why I just lost the game. First things first, pick hammer. 1 point of damage to Phrygius. Architectus, tower barrage. It says any enemy in a hex in a straight line. Oh, hey, no. Actually, I may have not be totally host. I forgot it's in a straight line. Maybe I might not be as bad off as I thought I was. It's a big maybe. It's a huge maybe. But hey, it actually makes me feel a little bit better now that I didn't play as dumb as I thought I was. So let us be mean. Nope, we did win the game. Yep, won the game. We will increase our control by 1. Let's end our turn. So, we are done with our ability phase. We control this catapult, 1 point of damage. We control this catapult because we have +1 control, because Malleus has the ability to increase the control of anybody, including himself. 2 control versus 1 control. That catapult also fires. That does 1 more point of damage. The light has been defeated. Darkness has reigned. And that's going to end this playthrough for Bestiary of Sigillum. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I will do my best to get to them as quickly as I can. You also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That is otsbgr@gmail.com. I do my best to answer those emails as quick as I can. Enjoy the video. You enjoy the content I put out there. Think about supporting the channel on Patreon. Just $1 in the tip jar can help me cover my costs, help keep the channel growing strong. Remember, this channel is 100% sponsor free. No games, no gimmicks. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. About that, my 10-year anniversary next year. And it would be fantastic if I get to 10,000 subscribers by my 10-year anniversary. Make me so darn happy. Think about supporting the channel by tossing $1 in the tip jar. Like and subscribe because your likes and your subscriptions definitely matter. And as always, thanks for watching. Hey everybody, welcome out to the show, Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the tabletop gaming hobby, and this video is part of a video series looking at Bestiary of Sigillum. This is also a video series looking at the cat who's going to stare at me and give me the eye because he wants the attentions. What up, buddy? How you doing? You can't be here. You must go over here. Now, of course, the rules, I'm pretty sure, are pretty stabilized. And I'm sure the cat is stabilized. And the camera stabilized. And the cat jumped on the table again. You're making this hard, buddy. You're making it very hard. Now in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some playthrough for the game itself. But if you just want a quick overview, or a cat. If you want a cat. Do you want a cat? Anybody want a cat? He's a great cat, very dexterous, has lots of athletic ability to jump on a table. It was like the 5th time he's done this. I've redone this intro like 5 times now. It would be comical if it wasn't for the fact that it's frustrating. Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the tabletop gaming hobby, and this video is part of a video series looking at Bestiary of Sigillum. Now this video is based on a prototype of the game, so the components you're seeing in this game, that just all sucks. You know, this all sounded great like 7 takes ago. You are a stinker.